Hey, what's up, guys? Back from Portugal. Lots to talk about on today's episode. I have some other things planned. However, I think for today, we'll just stick to Portugal. Expect a new episode to come out with those topics very recently, as I have some upcoming days where I'll be free. But as for my trip, yes, I went to Portugal with my wife and my parents as well, and my brother as well. And we stayed there for about like 9, 10 days pretty much, and I'll get into the more specifics of it. But yeah, overall, if I were to rate it out of a 10, I would say the food probably 8, 9, 10. The seafood that I've had there was phenomenal, amazing. It was different than what I'm used to here, so that's something that I'll talk about. The I guess landscape and the countryside. When I went to Italy back in high school, one of the things I loved was just seeing wide open plains and beautiful mountain ranges, seeing the water tied into the mountain ranges and the coast. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And it was very similar in Portugal. So I also thought that the people there were extremely nice. There was, yeah, obviously there's a lot of people. We kind of stand out, right? So you look at kind of what we were seeing and what they were seeing. They saw a bunch of silly Americans, right? They saw us coming and they would say, "Oh, come here, sit," and they would automatically speak English because they knew we were Americans. I mean, I don't look very Portuguese myself. Not many of us in our family do, unfortunately. However, there was some very cool places that we saw and some really cool things that we did. So to start off the trip, my wife and I, Tuesday, we get on a flight to JFK where we're going to meet up with my parents. Flight, normal, no issues or anything. Get to JFK, and then we have to wait there for a couple of hours, like 4 or 5 hours, to wait for our gate to open up. And unfortunately, since we're not checked into our flight, we're not actually able to go like inside JFK. We're kind of on the outskirts. There's a couple food places out there, but in reality, it's very crowded and it's also like right at the opening of the terminal there. Terminal 1, I think it was. So we're chilling, hanging out. Parents show up, boom. Everybody gets checked, we go through, boom. And then we fly, and I'm going to have to pull up a map to try and find this tiny, tiny island. Ponta Delgada. This is the place at a little airport. It's a tiny, tiny island in the Atlantic Ocean. Uh, Probably like an hour, maybe 2 hours away from our final destination in Lisbon. And so we go there, we land there, and it's weird because they speak Portuguese there. Because I do think it's like part of the Portuguese government's territory. Once again, I'm not gonna fact check a lot of what I'm saying. Uh, Please, in your own time, do research. Tell me if I'm wrong about any of the stuff that I talk about. I'm not an expert at all. I definitely don't claim to be an expert. And so we get to Ponta Delgado, hop on our other flight. People are speaking Portuguese and are like, "Oh, okay." Go through customs, all that stuff. Fine. Boom. Land in Lisbon. Lisbon, Portugal. I believe it's the capital. And as we're flying in, I'm actually going to pull up something over here because as we were landing, I took some pictures. And then here is the view as Carmela is comes up here. She has her little ball. I'll toss it for her, and she will come back. All right, but here's the view that I saw coming off as we were descending in the plane. And now, if you'll allow me to kind of zoom in to the physical picture right here, that is, you know how in Brazil they have that giant Jesus statue? Well, this is kind of the similar sort of thing. It's called Cristo Rei, REI. And it's because once again, it's Europe, it's very Catholic, Christianity, very big there. So a lot of those Roman Catholic, you get kind of the point. So Jesus is a big thing over there. So eventually we would go to the top of that, and you can't really see around there, but there was other things around there as well that would kind of show you more information about the place and about the impact of, I guess, Catholicism and different religions' impacts on Lisbon and Portugal in itself. And so, yeah, that was the first thing that I saw as we were landing in Lisbon. And you can also see right down here, this beginning section is going onto a bridge. And now I don't think I got really a good solid picture of it. But if you look at it, it's the Golden Gate Bridge. And the reason for that is because the architect who built the Golden State Bridge also built this bridge in Lisbon, Portugal. And there are many people from Portugal who live in San Francisco, and many people in San Francisco have family who live in Portugal. Quick side note, it was very hard to leave her. My wife and I, we did not enjoy that part, but she stayed in a very good place, and she hasn't really been alone for that long a period of time. I mean, it was 10 days. But she was able to kind of hang out, and Carmela, yeah, I guess it's fine that she has that. But it was nice for her to go to a place that, one, allowed her to interact with other dogs, and two, gave us the ability to watch her because we got like a special suite so we could have a camera on her. And we'd wake up, it was like a 5 hour time difference. We'd wake up at like 8 a.m. and then we'd look at her and she'd be sleeping. So, and we'd look at her periodically throughout the day, like that kind of stuff. But, anyways, we get to Portugal, get to Lisbon, go through the airport there, which I really liked. I thought it was a genuinely a nice place. And then we were in an Airbnb in like the right along the coast right there. Like we were very, 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 very fortunate. And obviously much of it is due to my parents. And I'll do my best to talk about them in a as respectful, with the most amount of respect and the most amount of props that I can give, because this was a trip that not many people in the world are going to be able to take in their lifetime. So I'm extremely fortunate in that. But what I was even more fortunate was to get off the boat right then and there, engage in culture. This is the first place that we went to eat, just on a random street. And your boy is eating. That's a sardine. Now, if you can see kind of right here on my plate, bones. I've never eaten a fish with bones. With that being said, though, I've always had sardines here in America, but they've always been like in a tin can in oil. Not very good. Here in Portugal, that's one of their main things. Like they had stores as big as my apartment building full of different flavor sardines, salty, salt and vinegar, barbecue, any flavor you can think of. They had a sardine for that. So that was really cool to see. And it also tasted pretty good as well. But that was one of the places we were just walking around, kind of just like, what do you want to do? And then somebody just walked out of a restaurant and said, come here, come sit, come sit, come sit, come sit. And we were like, all right. So we sat down and we had an excellent meal. Now we get to the good stuff. Here is kind of where I'm gonna just say this is a cool place, and there is some significance to it that I just don't know. Now, to give a little bit of a backstory, we did do a bike trail through this whole place, and that statue right back there is a statue of one of the people who used to lead Lisbon in Portugal because there is a long history. Unlike America, there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years of people who have lived in this particular part of the world, which obviously in America you had natives who lived here before the Europeans got here. But America, as we know it, has been around since 1776, right? But with these European countries, many of them are hundreds and hundreds of years old. You think of Rome, you think of Italy, many places there in Italy are hundreds of years old. Greece, you get the point. So this was kind of the town square. Right on the other side is water, right over here. And then just beautiful architecture everywhere. This is about 4 stories high to the top of this. So this was magnificently huge. And just kind of walking around and seeing that stuff was very cool as soon as we got out. And now it wouldn't be until later in our trip where we would take a bike tour and kind of learn more about the city itself. I really liked learning about the kind of history of the whole thing. And I really thought that the city itself, because I didn't know anything about Portugal. I know about their soccer team, but that's pretty much it. What I know about Portugal is Cristiano Ronaldo. So there's that. And now here we start going into some a little bit better pictures. This is on our bike tour. We took a bike tour and our we had two guides and we were on bikes. Now the thing about Lisbon is if you can imagine seeing kind of down here more towards the bottom, we're pretty high up. We're on a little bit of a cliff right over here. You can kind of see that's a castle of some king. And then over here is where the Cristo Rey statue is. So you can even see it from right where we're at in Lisbon. And then right here is that Golden State Bridge replica that I had talked about. It's huge. It's massive. It's crazy. But this is us at the top of this viewpoint overlooking the city. And we biked it's kind of hard to make out, but we kind of started off right along this coast right here, and then we biked up to this point and kind of went down out and around the city. But our bikes had electric motors in them, so if you needed to, you would pedal, and if you got to a certain speed, it would shut off. But if you were pedaling and up to like 13 kilometers an hour, it would pedal pretty much for you, like the engine would turn on. Now, I was still in a little bit of a mode of trying not to gain too much weight, although once I got there, I let go of any dieting I was doing. I was eating until I was about ready to blow up. One, because food there is so good, and two, because I wanted to try and cut down and be somewhat lean when I got there, so I would look good in these shirtless photos that I thought I was gonna post, but I don't think so. I don't think I need to. I just it was kind of something that I did more so for myself to say, hey, I can lose what, 10? I probably lost like 5 to 10 pounds within the span of about 2 months. So it was pretty aggressive what I did, but I'm pretty happy with the results. It could have been better, but I think overall I did pretty good with my maintenance of my calories. I didn't do as much tracking as I should have. But I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not taking it too seriously. But anyways, this is the overview of Lisbon from that certain viewpoint. And we were on a bike tour. It was beautiful. Our tour guides could not have been nicer. They were so cool. And one of the things that I will harp on is after meeting all of these people, it was a sense of damn. I really enjoyed that person. They're so genuine. Everybody was nice. I don't know if they were doing being nice to us and helping us out and having real conversations with us. Like, oh, you play like 2K. Like, oh, you play Madden. Oh man, did you see what happened in this? Like talking about real stuff, not talking about, oh, we have to be on the tour. But they're not being a tour guide. They're being a real human being, which I respected so much. And I really, really am happy that they did that. But with that being said, on the tour, one of the things that I thought of was, or I guess this is more at the conclusion of this particular tour, was I really like these people. And I said this to my wife. I said, if I had unlimited money, I would say, hey, why don't you guys come over and have dinner with me and my family? Whatever you were going to get paid for the rest of the day, I'll give to you. You just come sit down and have dinner with us. And I want to know what it's like to live in Europe. What do you think of America? When you see Donald Trump becoming president, Joe Biden as president currently, all the things that have been going on in America, I live in America and I work in news and I hear about it every single day. I couldn't tell you anything about Portugal, politics, especially sports. There's more, but it's almost zero. But with America, I would imagine a lot of Europeans kind of know what's going on. And so I would have loved to sit down and have a conversation with our tour guides about that because they were kind of in my age. They were in their 20s. One of the tour guides was about 19, maybe 20, and the other was in his mid to late 20s. And so they were very nice, very down to earth, regular dudes. Like I said, one was right about my age. He might have been 25, 26, if I remember. But just very cool guys and very knowledgeable about things. We would go to a church and be like, in 473 AD, the king of whatever this place was called at the time ruled here. Like they were very knowledgeable, and it was cool to have them kind of guide us through Lisbon, through all the major sections. But with that being said, we did see something cool, and we were just taking our bike and we stumble upon this place. Now, I've tried to point out who the guy is, but he's in this picture somewhere. He might be on the left, he might be on the right. But during the late 1900s, so we're talking 50 years ago, maybe, there was a massive revolution in Portugal against a dictatorship that was in power at the time. And through this revolution, they were able to gain a lot of the rights. And now the tour guide said something that was interesting. He said his grandparents, who lived way out in the countryside, they weren't in the cities or anything like that. They didn't have any positive or negative views on the leader at the time, even though he's committing atrocities. They were more so like, yeah, we get our all of our food. We're kind of just hanging out. Nobody bothers us out here, so we don't have any real opinion on the leader at the time. Whereas if you had asked somebody in the city, they would say he is one of the worst humans on the face of the earth. So that was cool to kind of know how that difference switched between living in the city and the countryside, specifically with one of our tour guides' relatives. But back to this image. This is the painting of a famous photo of this freedom fighter or rebel, whatever you may call it. And she and the gun that she is using symbolizes, I assume it's a woman. The gun that she is using has a rose in the point of it to kind of symbolize instead of shooting bullets, we're going to shoot roses, and roses are a symbol of love. And the person who is painting this is the same person who painted the, if you know the Obey, Obey, the clothing line, but also the person who painted the famous Obama inauguration, or not inauguration, but when he announced his 2008 campaign run, that same kind of art style as this right here. So the same, he was one of these people was that dude. And as you were there was a bunch of TV people there, and they were filming stuff. So that was really cool to be there and see. And they were kind of talking about just how cool it was that they were coming to Portugal. So moving on, we did go to many places like Lisbon. There's a lot of different places around it. So one of the places that we went to, this was June 22nd, was we went to this place called Belém, and Belém was gorgeous. So as we were going to Belém, which the ride there was a lot of fun because they have these thing called tuk-tuks. Let me actually pull up a picture of a tuk-tuk so you kind of understand what I'm talking about if you'll give me a quick second of your time. All right, so we started off in a tuk-tuk and we took it all the way there. They are very popular in Indonesia and very popular in like Thailand, Sri Lanka, like very popular car. So this is kind of what we took. It's not this exact thing, but it's very similar to kind of what we took. You can see this is kind of more similar to the actual thing that we took, where we're sitting in the back and there's a person driving up front. So we took one of those all the way from our place. Now we did have a car that we rented, but we to get around the city and stuff, we just used tuk-tuks, or I don't think we ever used Uber. We used taxis and stuff, but for most of it was just a tuk-tuk, or we would walk. That was kind of what we did. We took the tuk-tuk, and it was a very fun ride. Our driver was full of energy. He was like, you have to go to this place. You have to do this. You got to do that. You got to go to this restaurant. You got to go to this castle. So he was very fun, very energetic guy. And we get off and we're in this place called Belém. Now, I'm not going to give a history lesson on Belém, but this is like one of the first places that we saw. This is a giant, giant church. And one of the things about Europe in general is the architecture there is one not only very, very old, but it's also very, very elegant. So you can kind of see just the outside of this church right here. I mean, you can zoom in as far as you possibly can, and each and every single one of these must have taken hours, if not days, to individually inscribe into the stone right here. Just beautiful, beautiful architecture everywhere you looked, especially on these very, very old, especially religious buildings. So we didn't go inside of this particular church. We kind of were just on the outside of it, but this was one of the cool places that we did see there in Belém. Other places that we did see were um some like this I don't I'm not even sure what this is called, but if you look at a postcard of Portugal, a lot of the times you'll see this particular place. Now, when we showed up, they weren't letting anybody inside, right? They were just kind of she's eating stuff. They were just kind of hanging out and not letting people in. Like they were just chilling outside, like security. So we weren't able to go in, but we kind of just were on the outside and just looking at it. I don't know any of the history behind this place. I think this is like an outpost that they use to look at and defend against the Spanish, I believe, because they had beef with Spain apparently a long time ago. And so that's a very famous place that I cannot tell you an inch of certainty about in terms of its coolness factor. And so next up, we will be going to Sintra. Sintra was, in terms of Lisbon, probably my favorite place to travel to, probably my favorite place to visit because it had the mountains, it had the landscape, the beautiful views, and it had the cool ass stuff. So I'll show some pictures first, and then I'll kind of give a better rundown over what these things are. So this is a giant castle that we went to. This was the first place that we went to. We took a train to the, if you can imagine, behind bottom of a mountain, or this is at kind of the top of a mountain, but you turn around, you go down to the bottom, there's a train station. We're going there. People are running up. They're like, let me take you somewhere. Let me take you somewhere. We were supposed to have somebody take us. Then we went to the bathroom. We came back outside and the person had left. So we just got another person who ended up being an extremely nice man. And so we go to this place as our first place, and I will show you some of the most beautiful gardens and architecture that I've personally seen. Like if you look right here, this is the view walking into, like, we're not even technically on the inside of the castle itself. This is just more so kind of walking in. Now they had audio tours. My wife tried to download it, but it wasn't as cool as one would hope. Very cool place. Really enjoyed just kind of walking in and seeing that particular opening. But as we walk through it and as I'll show you, just it just some of the stuff just didn't make sense how somebody who was able to one like afford all this stuff. We're talking hundreds of years ago. This is just like a random um place, just like a little pond. Now the inside of it isn't as lovely as you would hope, but it was still cool to see nonetheless. It just trees, shrubs, plants everywhere, everywhere. It was beautiful. Moving on, this is one of the wells that we went into, which was extremely cool to see. And we saw another one, which I do think I have a video of. Um, but I did take pictures of it, but it was kind of a cool thing to see. But as you can see, this particular spot wasn't too much to be seen. It was kind of very hard to see down there, and I don't think anybody was allowing us to walk down. Here's another view of it. And here is a better view of one that we actually went down. And so, kind of the story surrounding this particular one is that this was a place where they would take people to bring them into the Freemasons, a kind of secret society that they were doing out there. I've heard of the Freemasons before, but if you want to fact check me on this, I will go to an article to kind of talk about some of these places as well. But that was this castle and just kind of a little view of it. We can go to this picture right here. This is kind of as you're going out through the gardens. And I tried to do my best to just be in the moment and enjoy everything. I knew I wouldn't remember everything and I couldn't go back years later and look at pictures, but in the moment, it made me appreciate it much more because I was like, damn, I'm over the Atlantic Ocean. Like, I'm not even on the same continent as the United States anymore. I'm in Europe right now. Let me try and get every single inch of joy out of this thing because this was such a cool trip. But moving on, we can kind of see a little bit of the inside. I didn't take any pictures, but on the inside of it, it was just like a regular kind of castle. They had rooms, gold, beautiful artwork everywhere, and they had some history about the previous owners of the places there as well. And then next up, we went to the best view that we saw, which was the Moorish Castle, which was one of the best places for me because it had such a great view. This is just walking out and kind of looking over off into the distance, and it's pretty much just endless. You can see kind of where the ocean comes in. It's kind of hard to see right here, but you can see the entire coastline. And it's just the colors of the greenery of the surrounding area and the just beautiful landscape. It was a beautiful day out as well. Very hot, but it was still no clouds as you can see in the sky. And we kind of got to the top of it and it was beautiful views, beautiful views. Although it was hard to hike because we had to walk so many steps to get up to get to some of these views. Here's another one that I can show right here. Just a crazy, crazy overlook. Here's the flag there because I believe the Moorish were Saudi Arabian, I believe. And they ruled the country for about like 50 years or something. And this is one of the things that they built. It was a massive, giant structure of walls, and then there was a castle, but we did not go into the castle. And then it's kind of in this same area, we went to this place called Penna Palace, which was the most unique place that we ended up going to the entire trip. So with Penna Palace, I might just let you go through the whole roll right here. This is at the bottom. You can kind of see over here to the right. We are in line. They have people getting us checked in. And then we kind of go up and around a corner. And then we're able to be inside of this place. And it was crazier than I had imagined. Once again, this was like a king's summer home. This is not a main residence, right? Here's a more wide view shot. You can kind of see this other part. And they said that there was different colors, different styles, because the people wanted different places of the world to be represented in this particular place. And this is just something that I saw walking up. This was in a random doorway, and I took this from about 20 feet out and I zoomed in. And I'll zoom in even once more. These are individual tiles on once again just a random doorway, and you can see how intricate and how identical these are to each other. And now these are hand painted, these are not printed, these are hand painted by a person. Just something that you very rarely will see in America. Just this amount of detail on something so large, and stuff like this was everywhere. Everywhere that you looked, any wall, you could find something similar to this. So just absolutely beautiful stuff. Here's another example. right here. It's like, what the heck? Now, these aren't insanely intricate or anything, but just stuff like this was on everything. You can look right up here on these windows, right up there, those individual tiles. Like this place was crazy. Beautiful, beautiful. I really did enjoy what it had on the inside. And this is now where on the inside of it, kind of walking around, and inside of all of these is obviously rooms and offices and different living quarters and alike. So we kind of were just walking around on the outside. Everything is all kind of connected, and it was beautiful, 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 beautiful. And then you can kind of see right here a nice little viewpoint. And one of the things about this was it was similar to the other one where it did not have like a crazy like viewpoint or anything, but it still had a good enough viewpoint. Like we're talking in relation to the Moorish castle, which I thought was the best view of our entire trip. But back to the castle. Look at this. This was one where I was just like, dude, what, why do you even need to do this? This is all coral seashells that are etched into this. And it's just a doorway. It's a doorway to a, a different part of the place. It's like an archway. And it's just insane to see. You see the leaves up here. You see what I would imagine would be like Poseidon or something like that. Aquaman, who knows? And so here's this other picture right here. Just a crazy, crazy place. That was one of the more absurd places that we ended up going to, but it was one of my favorite. And then the kind of, I guess, next part of our trip was spent kind of just hanging out in Lisbon. We would go places, go out to dinner, go out to eat, find a nice restaurant. And obviously, I didn't take any pictures of that, right? Because once again, I wanted to kind of just be in the moment. And it was a beautiful city, just like all of Europe, very similar to Italy, cobblestone, very nice places to eat, and also very nice spots to just generally uh hang out. Food, amazing, amazing food. And now we move on to Lagos. So let me see if I can pull up a map again. Let's see. Here we go. Here we go. All right, maps. Boom. All right, so right here, we started off our journey in the lovely place of Lisbon. And you can see Lisbon right here. You can also see Sintra right over here. Beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful place. One of my favorite, that's Penna Palace right there. And so then from Lisbon, we went all the way south, drove for about 2.5 hours until we got to the southern part of Portugal. And this was my favorite spot, Lagos. Lagos was phenomenal, 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 phenomenal. And I will show you why. Here is just one simple example of the place that we were staying at. You walk outside, and this is your view. The rock formations, we're talking tens of millions of years old. You can see in these rock formations that I probably will be able to show later the where of the old water line of the entire Earth millions of years ago. And it's really cool to see that difference from then to now. Also, the weather was pretty good as well. I mean, every night we would go out, it'd be like 70, maybe 80, and just overall a cool spot to be. At night, it was cool, it was cold, it was like 70, 75. In the day, it was like 85 to 90. Couple of the final days that we were there, we stayed there for probably like 5, 6 days. last couple of days, like 3 days, it got up into like the 95s and like it was pretty brutal, unbearable. But this is also in Lagos. We took a boat trip once again. The people who were on the boat were Port uh obviously Portuguese, but they had been kind of world travelers. They one of them had been to America, was going to go to America in about, I mean, at the time of this recording, in like a month from now, pretty much. And this person had gone all over Europe and throughout Asia a little bit. And so he was a very cool person to talk to and very nice. But they took us on this boat trip, and this is some of the rock formations that you were able to see there. And it is hard to see it right here, but maybe I can illustrate it later. But you are able to see a distinct water line. I guess a good point would be right here. You can kind of see the breaking away of the rocks right in the middle of the screen. And that's evidence of the old rock formations. But I'm sure I have other pictures that can help. One of the cool things about being on the water here was just how going along. So we just went along the coast, right along the south of it. And by doing so, we were able to see all of this type of rock formation. I think it's like sandstone, limestone, and another kind of stone that's stacked on top of each other over millions of years. And this is kind of one of my favorites of the coastline. And this one you should definitely be able to see a pretty distinct water line. And I'll just go right here, start right here, and just keep looking in the middle of your screen, right where you see the black. And if I go right across here, boom, right there, pretty distinct water line right here, right on this edge right there. You can see that water line, pretty distinct. And this was something, as you go back out, you can start from the right and kind of follow almost in a straight line to the left. And that's where the water line was. So beautiful, beautiful trip. Super happy that we actually got to do that. Got to see a jellyfish while we were out there. I did not take pictures, but that was very cool to see. Now we are done with pictures that I took, which is fine. Pictures that I took. So now, and there was many more places that we did see there, but now I kind of want to touch back on Sintra and maybe wrap this thing up. So if you'll come with me right here, boom. 5 breathtaking castles in Sintra, Portugal. You can't help but love by Antonina. All right. Tips for visiting the castles. Pena Palace. Arguably the most popular place in Sintra. This is the place everybody talked about. Pena Palace, Pena Palace, Pena Palace. Pena Palace needs no introduction. Colorful Sintra Castle is an internet sensation. Built in the 12th century, Pena Palace serves as the crown jewel of the Sintra Hills. Engrossed in the lush forests and beautiful gardens, the palace combines the beauty of nature and the splendor of royal wealth harmoniously. Right, sometime in the 12th century, there was a chapel dedicated to Our Lady of Pena, built atop the hill Pena Palace sits on today. Years later, King Manuel I ordered the construction of a monastery to be built on the site. Everything was fine and dandy until the Great Lisbon earthquake of 1755, which I forgot to mention was something that our tour guides back when we were in Lisbon talked about. So apparently in 1755, there was a extremely bad earthquake. And this earthquake, because so many of the buildings were built with certain materials that if shaken would fall apart, would break apart, they started crashing down on the people in the city. And because of the earthquake, and because Lisbon's right on the water, right in that little cove right there, there was floods, tsunamis, and most of the people in the city died. And also because of the building materials, a lot of wood that they were using, there was a fire that started, and then the city burned down. So they pretty much screwed up the entire city for a long, long time. And so they have around the areas, some of the statues are of the leader who brought them out of that time. And that was something that our tour guide talked to us about as well. So 1755, and their almost entire city just got demolished. Like you see some of the churches now, they're completely rebuilt. Like a lot of the tile and the concrete and the new supplies is all new stuff on government buildings, on anything, pretty much. Because not a lot of stuff really survived the earthquake, the flood, and the fire. So it was a trifecta of suckiness. So the back to Penipalis. Everything was fine and dandy until the Great Lisbon earthquake of 1755, which reduced the monastery practically to ruins. Because now thinking back, Lisbon to Sintra is not that far. The monks were not easily deterred, and the monastery remained active for an entire century until the abolition of religious orders in Portugal in 1834. At that point, Penipalis was abandoned, destined to be forgotten until King Ferdinand II stepped in. Enchanted by the breathtaking nature upon visiting Sintra, Ferdinand decided to transform the monastery into a summer palace for the Portuguese royal family. This dude was balling out of control, balling out of control. Crazy money. When King Ferdinand died in 1885, the palace was bequeathed to his second wife, the Countess of Edla. The palace was then sold to King Louis, Ferdinand's son, who wanted to keep the palace in the royal family. The family continued to use it until the monarchy fell in 1910. Kind of crazy to think about. Afterwards, Penipalis was classified as a national monument and purchased by the Portuguese state. Interesting fact, Queen Amelia, Portugal's last queen, spent her final night at Penipalis before leaving the country in exile. Very cool. All right, that's just how to visit Penipalis. Here's some more views of kind of, I showed you this, if you remember. I kind of showed you this particular wall walking in, just kind of the abs, like it's just like a random entryway, and the architecture is insane. All right, here's another place we didn't see this place. It looked nice. I mean, from these pictures, I have no idea where this was. A big ass place, Montserrat. Very cool. This is a place that I showed you earlier. I almost took this exact same picture. So this is the place that had that I guess well or whatever it was with the Freemasons. It also had the beautiful garden as well. So this is Quinta de Regalera or Regalira. Designed in the late 1800s, Quinta de Regalira is one of the most incredible castles in Sintra. The whimsical gardens at Quinta, I'm just going to say Quinta, mimic ancient secret orders full of hidden tunnels and concealed symbolism that speak to a time since forgotten. This Sintra Palace is the passion product of Antonio Augusto Carvalho Monteiro, an eccentric millionaire eager to appease his ideologies and bewildering whims. I get it. With a strong passion for alchemy, masonry, and the Rosicrucianism, Monteiro hired renowned Italian architect Luigi Manini to bring the vision to life. Focus on Manueline, Renaissance, medieval, and classical styles of architecture. Both men were known for their eclectic personalities. So it's only fitting that the end result turned into one of the most beautiful Sintra castles. The end result was an estate that housed the palace, chapel, and park with lakes, grottos, fountains, and wells. Quinta was designed to fascinate, confuse, and delight visitors with secret passages and hidden tunnels. Chief among them are the famous initiation wells. That's the wells that I talked about, which seem to be the biggest draw at this beloved Sintra Palace. What's with the initiation wells at Quinta? The initiation wells are two wells that resemble underground towers lined with stairs. The wells were used for ceremonial purposes. They were never used for water. That included tarot initiation rites. The number of steps and the spacing of the landings is linked to tarot mysticism. It's fascinating to imagine these wells being used for that purpose, which is why I consider this one of the coolest places in Sintra. Here's kind of their view of it right here. And this is kind of what we saw. Very cool. The initiation well, climb to the top of the tower, the gardens. Yeah, the gardens there were second to none. It's beautiful. Yeah, I think this is there as well. Right now, the Moorish castle, my favorite personal view, right? Like actual physical looks was the Moorish castle. Up the steep hillside to the Moorish castle. This hike is no walk in the park, but it's definitely manageable. I agree. Luckily, the wind there was very strong and the heat was very hot. So it was a good mixture because you would get super hot, but then a big gust of wind would come and you'd cool right down. When I first saw photos of Castello de Moros, I assumed it was the Great Wall of China. Getting to climb the ancient castle walls and lookout towers is an unforgettable experience, which is why no list of the best castles of Sintra is complete without mentioning this gem. It's cool to see her do this because I can look and I remember all these places. I don't know why it won't let me zoom in, but if you can see my cursor kind of right in the middle of this image, there is a secret compartment and door that's right there, and this is how you know I was there. Right here, right where my cursor is, there was a secret door that you would open up in case you wanted to sneak attack the enemy. Say they were up on the walls and attacking you on ladders and that kind of stuff. You could climb through that hole, go out through the bottom, and then you'd be right behind them on the bottom. Now, if there was people coming up, then you were kind of toast. But if they were up on ladders, you could sneak attack them. So that was kind of right there in that area, and you can just see the wall just goes up, up, and around. So, history of Castello de Moros, originally built in the 8th century, Castello de Moros was positioned at a high vantage point to ensure protection over Sintra. This Sintra castle successfully fought off many invasion attempts before succumbing to the Christian Crusade in 1147. Portuguese king hoped to strengthen the defense of Castelo de Moros, but the royal king favored Lisbon and didn't want to invest in repairs. As expected, the castle was neglected, destined to eventually yield to the forces of nature and decay. Fast forward to King Ferdinand II, same guy behind Penna Palace, who, fueled by a passion for the arts and Middle Ages, ordered the reconstruction of the castle. To this day, Castello de Moro stands proudly, gates wide open, accepting visitors from all over the world. Just this is a great shot because this is kind of what you would see. You'd see just open countryside, and then way, way off, you would see the water right there. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Things to do at Castellos, honestly, just explore the grounds to your heart's content. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing with this is it was mostly just views. Like there wasn't like really a castle that we went into. There was a couple places that we saw to like honor the Moorish and honor the people who built it, but yeah, very, very. And then this is a place that we didn't go to, but it did look pretty cool. But yeah, that was Sintra. And you can kind of see right here how close they are. So there's the Moorish castle, right? Those big giant ass walls. And then this is Quinta. So we were actually able to walk from the Moorish castle to Penna Palace. We took from Quinta, we took a car, our driver, who stayed with us the entire day. Super nice guy, lovely man. I wish him nothing but success. I hope he wins the Powerball, which is up to like $1 billion here in Pennsylvania, which is crazy to think about. But anyways, he brought us here. And then he would kind of wait. He'd be like, well, you want to make sure that you go to this particular section of it because there's not going to be as many tourists. He gave us some tips, which ended up helping us out. Now here we go to the Moorish castle, Castle of the Moors. I mean, come on, man. Like that's just beautiful. Beautiful. Castle of the Moors is a hilltop medieval castle located in the central Portuguese civil parish of Santa Maria e São Miguel, Principality of Sintra, about 25 kilometers northwest of Lisbon. Built by the Moors in the 8th and 9th centuries, it was an important strategic point during the Reconquista and was taken by Christian forces after the fall of Lisbon in 1147. Beautiful spot, beautiful spot. Here's a kind of little bit more about it. It was very, very cool to kind of see all this and just realizing just how freaking old this place is. Like it was crazy, crazy to think that this was around hundreds of years before George Washington, like the people who built our country and or I should say the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, those people. Like we're talking hundreds of years before those people. And to me, those people are ancient. So it's crazy to think about the time difference in Europe than it is in America because for a lot of people, American history starts in like 1600s maybe. I mean, maybe the 1500s, maybe. I don't know. That's where most people, I mean, most people think of 1492 with Christopher Columbus. That's kind of when most people think, or I should say, some people think of the start. And to have a place like this, which has been around for just so long, is cool to see. Then here's Penna Palace, side view of the palace. This place was absolutely insane. It's beautiful, and we did get to go into the inside, and the inside was pretty cool as well. But there weren't as many rooms as I would have hoped that were actually open. Um, yeah, kind of talking about the history of it, the mix of architectural styles, which I thought was a pretty cool thing to look. Penna Palace has a profusion of styles, much in accordance with the exotic taste of the Romanticism. The intentional mixture of eclectic styles include the neo-Gothic, and as you can see right there, that little place, neo-Manueline, neo-Islamic, and neo-Renaissance. Much of this has been evident since major renovations in the 1840s. References to other prominent Portuguese buildings, such as the Belém Tower, are also present. So that's what that place is, the Belém Tower. If you remember back, I have no idea how long ago it was, but the Belém Tower, officially the Tower of St. Vincent, is a 16th century fortification located in Lisbon that served as a part of embarkation and disembarkation for Portuguese explorer and as a ceremonial gateway to Lisbon. Okay, so that's what that is. Cool. All right, but now back to Penna Palace. Almost the entire place stands on rocks in the Central Mountains. 4 sections. The foundation and its enveloping walls, the 2 gateways, the restored structure of the old convent and the clock tower, the arches yard in front of the chapel with its wall of Moorish arches, the palatial zone and its cylindric bastion with interiors decorated in the cathedral style. Very, very cool place to see. Like the detail on this place was very cool to see. And then Quinta is just what I'll call it. And yeah, you can kind of see around here. Maybe they have a little bit of the gardens. I hope they did have a chapel there, which I did forget to mention. This was very small. It's, yeah, here's the inside of it. We didn't go on the inside of it, but this is the inside of this little chapel that was right there on the premises that I thought was really, really cool to see because it's a huge property and there's just this little building that is so ornate and just crazy detailed. just chilling right there. All right, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh Lord. All right. Let's get out of there. Let's get out of there. All right. There we go. All right. And then yeah, you can kind of see the difference between these little sections. These are little gazebos that were around. And once again, there was like a dozen of these all over the place. Here's a place that was just kind of hanging around. Just the artwork that this place had was incredible. These were everywhere, everywhere. And they were all different and they were all unique. These are the tunnels. Which one? This is one where, if you can imagine, behind it is kind of where we were walking, and there's obviously no candles, no lights or anything, so we just used our phones. And it's like a secret passageway, and like people would bathe in here, they would hang out in here, they would do a bunch of stuff in here. So that was really cool to see. Here's one. We didn't actually go through this one, but this would have been nice to have actual light in there, but that was not what we did. I think this is one of the places that we went to, one of the places that I believe that they um would bathe in as well. Initiation wells. This is the very famous place. Um, as you can see, it's kind of very spirally going down. And then here's some fountains. Fountain of Abundance. This is a weird one because if you can see that little spout at the bottom, there was people actually washing their face and people even drinking the water. Like they would put the water in their hands and then they would drink it. I put some in my mouth and then I spit it out because who knows what's in that water? Are they cleaning the pipes? I don't know. Where are the pipes even coming from? Where's this water coming from? Who knows? Like this is probably not Poland Springs, I'm imagining. But that was a cool thing to see because I'm just walking around and turn a corner. I see these people drinking. I'm like, you know what you drinking? You know what's in there? I mean, I tasted the water. The water tasted fine, but I still spit it out because who knows? Who knows? But yes, that is technically I like many things, me just talking about it, I do not have the facilities, I do not have the skill, the expertise to give it as much praise as I possibly could. But that's as good as I do. And maybe in the future I'll talk about it again if the topic does come up, if I have guests on the show and I want to speak to them about my travels. But overall, some big takeaways from this is that the tour guides, the tourists that were on the tour that are from Michigan, that we met from Canada, Vancouver, Montreal, big places where people would say that they're from. People from Spain, a lot of people from Spain were there because Spanish is one of the top languages there. Spain Spanish, not um, Mexican or Dominican Spanish or Puerto Rican Spanish. Spain Spanish, proper European Spanish. Um, but it was cool to see the different people that gathered into a place, and I kind of just had the thought of, I'm probably, well, it's not a probably, it's a very, very likely I will never see these people again in my life and in their life. And when we were there, everybody was just so caught up in, I have to get this pic. I need to take 10,000 pictures on my phone. Let me bump you out of the way. Let me take a picture of my wife, even though you're standing right there and it's in the way. Everybody was kind of in their own world. And if they were in a group, the group would kind of stick together and push out anybody who would try and take a picture in the area. It was territorial. It was, for me, it was weird because I'm going there on vacation. I mean, my wife and I, we paid for a good amount of stuff for this trip, but we didn't pay for everything. We were very fortunate that my brother and my parents were able to offset some of the costs with flights, travel, you name it. We all kind of helped out together. And to see the people that were there, arguing with their family members, arguing with other people who are bumping into them. And you're at Penna Palace, place that's hundreds of years old. And you're like, does any of this really even matter? I'm talking about the hostility, yo, why are you bumping up to me? What are you do? All of that kind of stuff made me kind of upset because you're supposed to be there to appreciate this thing that has been around longer than you can probably trace your family back to. I have no idea what my relatives were doing in 1147. I don't know. I obviously had relatives that go all the way back then, and luckily that bloodline survived all the way up until 2023 with me right here. But the people who were there just didn't seem like they were able to appreciate the moment because there was so much extra stuff that was going on. There was, all right, we have a group of fourth grade school children who are doing a tour and they're talking, they're doing on. Let them do what they're gonna do. You can't be worried about what the other people, the other tourists are going to be doing. You just have to find a way to appreciate it. And just kind of going into each room and looking at stuff and being like, there was somebody who 400 years ago stood in this exact same spot. And if I were able to have a conversation with them and speak with them, what would I talk to them about? What would their worldview be? Would I be able to talk to them about something that I want to talk to pretty much every single person about? Are we alone in the universe? Is there life elsewhere out there? And if so, what does that mean? These are questions that I would ask somebody from 400 AD, 400 BC, anyone. And I think these people would have an interesting perspective on it, just like those same tourists who were so worried about, I need to get a photo. I need to make sure that my family's all together. We need to make sure that we're going to this place at this time. We need to plan what we're going to have for lunch. But there's so many people there. And I've heard of conversations of people, couples getting into arguments. The camera's not working. The camera's not. It just, it was weird for me because I'm there on vacation and tour guides and those people, they're there at work. They see this very often. So they have a different appreciation for this place than I do. They might even appreciate it more, but because they go to it every single day, they don't have the same appreciation that I do, where I'm like, I might never see this place again. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to Sintra, Portugal again, much less Penna Palace in Portugal again, or any of the other places that I went to in Lagos, wherever. And it was interesting to see the different perspectives of people around because there wasn't that many people who weren't constantly on their phone filming every single thing. And that was a weird one to me because I do understand that you want to film stuff so that you can look at it later. But the issue with that is you're filming stuff. And what I mean by that is you're not taking a second to put the phone down and actually look at something, to look at and reach out and grab. Penna Palace is a perfect example of this. The architecture, the individual stuff. I took pictures of it because I wanted to talk about it later. But in the moment, I just first saw it and I looked up and I just thought, who is the person who worked on this or the group of people that worked on this? What was their life like? How many hours a day did they work to get this done? How long did it take? What tools did they use? Did they enjoy it? Were they slaves? What were these people that helped to create this thing? And where is their bloodline? Do they have people in their family tree that are still living today? I don't know. And how would you even know that your great hundreds and hundreds of years removed helped carve this individual thing on this doorway in Penna Palace? That's what I thought when I saw all of the beautiful artwork, all of the beautiful scenery that was all over these places. And I just sat there in a moment and I said, I'm so grateful to be alive in 2023. I'm grateful to have the family that I have, the people around me who support me, the people who watch this podcast. I hope I can somewhat organize my ideas in a way that is enjoyable to listen to, but also something that is authentic as humanly possible. I try not to lie. I don't ever want to get clickbaity, and if I do, there's probably a reason for it. I'm trying to get some cash. But up until that point, I'm gonna be honest and I'm gonna try and be real with the audience. Just like I think many of the tour guides in Sintra and in Portugal and in Lagos. We didn't do too many tours in Lagos, but we did do that boat trip in Lagos. Um, Many of the people there were very similar to us Americans. They were working. They were doing stuff. Now Europe is a little bit different of the time frame. They eat dinner a lot later. They take a lot of breaks during the day. That was kind of cool to see. Like they would stop work at like noon, get like a 3 hour break, and then they would go back to work. So like some restaurants we would go to from like noon to like 2:30, the restaurant was closed. And then it would open back up again and be open until like 7:30 at night. And that was something I was like, why isn't it just open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m.? Like I didn't know. I didn't know, right? But other major overall point besides the people and not to my to if maybe they really enjoyed it, maybe they loved it, but I just saw so many people that were stuck on their phones, so many people that were arguing with significant others, arguing with kids, and yeah, sometimes kids can be annoying. I was annoying to my parents at times as well. But it was just hard to kind of see some people seem to be living in the moment more so than others, and I would have loved to see everybody live in the moment and be like, damn, this thing is 600 years old, and this little itty bitty piece of this tiny little architectural build was built by who in 1400 something or 1,000 AD. I almost said BC, but 1,000 AD. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of years ago, somebody built this. And just trying to connect to them because we're the same species, but we're a lot removed from those people. What was their daily life like? I mean, I doubt they were working a 9 to 5. I mean, I would doubt that they had a similar life whatsoever to what we live now, where you have TV and cars and restaurants to go out to. Like, did they have restaurants back in 1125? I don't have any idea. I have no idea. But I do think that many people, while they did enjoy it, they were not as engaged as I noticed. And I noticed that more so here in like a place like New York. You go to New York City and you walk around in the streets, everybody has their phone out, they're filming TikToks, they're doing dances, they're doing all this stuff. So it's not just a European problem, and it's not something that I'm not immune to. Trust me. There was many times where I would be on my phone in Lagos. So you'd be sitting out, it'd be beautiful out, and I'd be like, I kind of want to watch TikTok for like 20 minutes, which is something I regret because I wish, looking back on it now, that I just left my phone in my room and just went out and been in public, especially in Lagos, going down to the beach and just being in that water and looking at the scenery around me. But I am human, I am flawed, so I was on my phone probably too much. And I did feel like I did appreciate it as much as I could in the moment, but I just looking around saw so many people are just they're so stressed out and worried about what's the next thing. All right, we're here now. Okay, what are we doing next? We just got to Penn Palace. What are we doing next? And I'm not talking about my family. I'm talking about other people that were there and overhearing them. But in conclusion, I want to say a fantastic trip. To say that I am blessed, to say that I'm lucky is a drastic understatement. The amount of time that my brother, my mom, my dad, and my wife have put together to get us to go on that trip. There's so many planning behind the scenes. We're talking years of planning. And it wasn't perfect. There was issues, but overall in totality, it was a 10 out of 10. Even with those issues, because the highs were so high. The experiences that I was able to have and the people I was able to meet, even though I was not able to connect with them as deep as I would have liked to. But I really enjoyed it. I do hope to go back to Europe once again, see very cool places there. But this was a very, very memorable trip, and I could not be more lucky, more privileged to have had this experience, especially with my wife, with my family. And yeah, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the show. I do hope I have another episode coming out soon. We will talk about many stuff that is not related to Portugal. We will talk about space, talk about planets, we'll talk about telescopes, we'll talk about many different other topics like we normally do. And maybe I'll play some Kerbal Space Program. I haven't decided whether I will, but I may. This has been the Zach Moore podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Even if you listen to only 5 minutes, I doubt in the month that I after I put this out, I doubt anybody's gonna watch to this point. But if you're from the future, if you're listening to this a few years later in the future, it it it's hard to put into words just how much I appreciate a person even clicking on the video. Um, I don't put enough time or enough effort as I should into this podcast. Um, but I really enjoy doing this, and I every single person who clicks on the video, sees it in their feed and doesn't click on it, whatever. I really do appreciate you spending a little bit of time to give me some attention. I appreciate you for those listening this far, wanting to sit down and hear me ramble. It's not the best podcast. It's not even a good podcast. I'm just talking about stuff that I care about, that I think are fun, that are interesting, and I try and with my limited talent, I try and speak about things because I have all this running around in my mind 24/7. And I'm like, dang, I got to talk about that on the podcast because I can't do this, what I just did right now. I hate keeping all of this in my head. I have to get it out there. I have to speak to someone. And unfortunately, nobody's just going to let me talk freely for an hour without interruption. So thank you so much for listening. Can't wait to see you next time.